just wanted to say before we start, it looks like just you and I. Unfortunately, my co-host Austin had to do some shirt duty today, so just want to say, Austin, our thoughts are with you. I know you're out there shirting. My heart goes out to shirts across the Air Force. You guys got a mountain of work and different things that come your way. So wishing you the best, buddy, and we'll get you back on the next chat. Not going to lie, on this episode, Senior Master Sergeant Brent Kenney, I did not know anything about your story. And the more that I was fed, honestly, Austin was the one who sent me a lot of your backstory. And what I read through it, it's pretty exciting. So, but before we get into what your project was and where that's kind of taken you in the places that you've been and pitched this thing, let's hear a little bit about yourself, who you are, when you joined the Air Force, where you're at now, and what your role is.
Sure, thanks, Nate. Like I said, I appreciate you guys taking some time to kind of shine a spotlight on some of the hard work that's been done. But who am I? My name is Senior Master Sergeant Brent Kenney. I'm from the 52nd Civil Engineer Squadron here at Spangdahlem Air Force Base, Germany. I came into the Air Force in March of 2004. Matthew, it's getting a little long there. So, yeah, 2004. I grew up as an electrical power production troop inside the Civil Engineer Squadron. But today, currently, I sit as the operations superintendent for the operations flight. So it's actually the third largest traditional operations flight here in the Air Force. So it keeps me pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I spent some time in Spangdahlem, definitely an awesome area. Would not mind heading back there as I round out the rest of my Air Force career either. So obviously you're on this chat for a reason. So you've spent some time in the Air Force innovation space, as we like to call it. We use this platform as what we call a safe space to talk innovation and ideas and projects, and really just about people's journeys of taking something from a field level idea and how it started, where it goes, some of the hurdles and some of the successes that they faced along the way as they try to get it implemented. And I'm sure that you've faced many of those ideas with your project, as you've been in some of the highest Air Force places and platforms as far as presentations and ideas. And then I'm sure you've faced some many obstacles just trying to get some of those ideas through. So before we talk about, going through SparkTank and some of those things, why don't you tell us, what your project is, what it does, how you or a team of people, I'm sure, came up with this idea, and what your thoughts were when you even thought about it initially. Like, was it one of those things to where you're like, this will never work, this is crazy, or off the bat, you kind of know, oh no, this is guaranteed success?
So again, the name of the project is Project ArcWater, and initially in the beginning, it was myself. I was assigned to the 53rd Air Traffic Control Squadron. That's the only one in the active duty Air Force out of Robins Air Force Base. And so when Hurricane Michael destroyed Tyndall Air Force Base, our team was some of the first people on the ground, and so we packed up our normal stuff. They got on a C-130. They actually flew down there. The eye of the hurricane had moved off. The team had landed on the airfield, and they were living in the middle of the airfield for the first couple of days until the CRG and the Red Horse and everybody else kind of showed up. But what they quickly realized was that kind of 72-hour pack out that we had taken was starting to get low really quick, and so the team kind of started scouring around. They were looking for fuel. They were still pretty good on water at the time, but fuel was their main concern. And long story short, everything had been contaminated with salt water. You would get in a government vehicle. It's kind of like they made the joke, kind of like Grand Theft Auto without breaking windows. But they would get it in a government truck. They would drive like 5 miles and they would just stall and die. And so they started looking for fuel, and they couldn't find any clean fuel for about 90 miles. And so what we ended up doing was the team back at Robins ended up just loading a tractor trailer, nothing but 55-gallon barrels of food. And what should have been a traditional 4.5 hour drive was almost 15 due to the damage. to get the fuel down there. And that's when kind of I had this idea. I was like, being an old Power Pro troop from back in the day, kind of the early 2000 deployments. I used to work in a power plant in Baghdad and Ali Air Base. It used to be two. We would burn almost 30,000 gallons of fuel a day, just to keep the lights. And so that's where I had the idea. I was like, man, there's got to be a better way to solve this problem. So there's two things I know about water and fuel. They're heavy and they take up a lot of space when you try to palletize them. And so ArcWater was, I didn't really know a lot about ArcWater at the time. And, they had this thing, it was called like an industry day is what I think they kind of call it now. But my tech school instructor was a civilian that worked at Robbins. He was a retired master sergeant working for the Combat Com, and he sent me an email and was like, "Hey, they're having this innovation day. ArcWater is having this innovation day. I really think you should go." And so it was about a month later. I think I had a line number for master at the time. I was trying to. It was like EPR season, and I was like, "I got time for that." But I put a calendar reminder. I put a calendar reminder on my Outlook, and that month goes by, and the reminder jumps up, and I just didn't have anything going on. I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to this. And so I went over there, and there was during the industry day they were demonstrating this stuff called solar tank. And so I was sitting here listening to this pitch, and I just had a 1,001 notes inside of my head. And when he got done talking, I went up there and I just started nerding out hard on like how many amps does this make? How many kW is this? What's the voltage? I started asking all those questions. And he was like, "Hey, I'm just a pitchman." And he said, "Let me get you connected with the company." At that time, I had no idea what a SMSgt was. This was probably early 2019.
Yeah.
So I know ArcWater was still trying to get kind of that education out there. But long story short, I got connected with the company, and I kind of fired these guys a lot of questions. And after a couple back and forth conversations, I was like, most of the time when people think about solar technology, they think of the Harbor Freight sales magazine that they get in the mail, and they see the big square that powers like a little butterfly light that sits in your garden. But after doing some math with the company and really kind of talking about this, I was like, wow, there's a viable solution here. And so that was kind of where the first piece of ArcWater, kind of Arc came from the electrical piece, and then obviously the water from the water. But I went to my commander actually, when you mentioned earlier about some of the hurdles, and I don't want to get too far ahead in the conversation, but I went to my commander at the time and I said, "Sir, hey, I got this crazy idea, and I think that this can be because we were a mobility unit. All we did was record." And so he was, as I think this can really help the unit. And you talk about getting some of the hurdles that I have experienced in the past, or just kind of getting that leadership buy-in. And he didn't even hesitate. He actually put me on orders, flew me to they're in Brooklyn, New York, put me on orders to Brooklyn, New York, and sent me to the company for like a 2-day time, like a 2-day check this out. He literally said, "Go kick the tires on this thing and see where we're at." And so, in a nutshell, that's kind of where the idea actually started. It was just that need, for almost 2 decades really, of just watching all this fuel just burn over and over and over. And so the idea was, a generator has a window of fuel usage, whether it's completely loaded up or it's completely empty. And so the idea was, how do we flip the script? How do we get rid of that fuel consumption altogether, and we only burn fuel when we absolutely. And so that was kind of the basis of ArcWater. ArcWater really started kind of as that piece. And then I can fast forward a little bit later. We kind of went through the whole SBIR. We were funded. We had a funded phase 2 for the SBIR, and so we started getting our first prototypes right about the time I PCS. We had kind of like one piece of a prototype, and then I got orders to Spangal. And so I was like, "Okay, guys, like you got it, keep running with this," and I kind of thought I would never have the opportunity to kind of see that through. And so I PCS, and then as soon as I got here, there was this thing called Agile Combat Employment. I never heard of it at the time, and they were kind of like, "What do you know about me? I'm lightning and lethal." And I was like, "How much time do you have?"
You're
All I
right.
did. And so, believe it or not, the silver contract was due to expire in about 60 days.
Hmm.
And so I was like, hey, if we're talking about moving around, the theater, trying to cut down logistical tail, hauling all this stuff, let's give this a shot. And sure as anything, they extended the contract another 15 months and basically funded another system for agile combat employment. Ironically, they look completely different. What I initially started to solve at Robbins was not the same problem that I solved or trying to solve here at Spangdahlem. And that just proved to me that, it's not just a widget, it's a capability. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, kind of like where we're at and some of the things. But so then I was like, okay, we've got the power piece figured out. What about this water piece? And so moons ago, before game, Guardian Airman Innovation Networks, they had you would just go to the ArcWater site and they had an Excel sheet and you could just download it. There might have been, I think, maybe 20, or not 20, correction, about 2,000 companies on there at the time. And so I literally hit Control F and typed WATER in that Excel sheet. And there was 3 companies that came up, and I just did a little research. And it has the POC information. And I picked up the phone and just cold called the company and said, hey, this is who I am and this is where I'm at. And I think what you guys have is can be a real solution for a problem that we're trying to solve, here at Spangdahlem. And applied for a funded phase 2, which didn't get funded actually. But again, my leadership. I stepped in and, I went actually to my group commander at the time, Colonel Betsy Ross. She pitched for it and was like, hey, this is the other half, right? This is the piece. And so the group actually funded, we went direct to a phase 3. And they funded the water harvester. And so now we kind of had the total package, right? And so then we were kind of off to the races of, SparkTank and kind of deployments. But yeah, currently today, it's still the innovation is still growing. We've expanded to an entirely different match problem. Kudos to PACAF. You guys actually own more ArcWater systems than we do.
I was going to say, as soon as you mentioned where this started, because I was at Herbert Field for Michael. So some of the stuff that obviously that was down the road from us, but we felt it in our local area. So as soon as you said that area and having to deal with fuel and the water and all that stuff, I knew in our PACAF region, like if I didn't know what this was, that I would probably hear about this soon, especially with just, how our command is here. Obviously, we find little pieces of land in the middle of water. So it's going to be an issue for water and fuel.
Yeah, so just to kind of tie the bow on it, when I got here and I started pitching the idea, I actually went to a Greenbelt class taught by one Tech Sergeant Matthew Conley, who's a bit of a legend in this space. I didn't know that at the time. Didn't know anything really, maybe other than seeing the banner on the Air Force portal. I didn't really know what SparkTank was.
Yeah.
It was like the 3rd day of Greenbelt class, and just listening to Matt kind of talk, I was like, man, I'm gonna give this guy this idea. And so I started talking to him, and we ended up spending like 2 whiteboards later, 3 hours after class ended. Matt looks at me and he's like, "This is incredible." I'm like, "It's here. I'll show it to you. Like we got this." And so he was like, "We have to put this in SparkTank." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, like from the very beginning." Matt was just like, we're gonna take this. Okay, I'm with you. I'm on the ride. But I have to give Matt credit. Like he actually came up with the name for ArcWater and the logo, and you talk about his team members. Having I've kind of gotten lucky in having his leadership team members, but actually having like somebody who was going to take this ride with me. And that's when I got introduced to Tesseract and some of the people that used to work there before you guys. To really kind of help, kind of ramp this thing up. So then Matt and team here at Saber Nation has been second to none. Which, I think we've had a few good ideas roll out of Saber Nation here over the last couple of years. So it's been quite the trip.
Yeah, you brought it up and it throughout your talk there. How important to you, or maybe you didn't realize it at the time, but at each different level, it sounds like, at least for this portion, had quite a bit of buy-in from your leadership. Now, obviously, I know it's not as easy as you just walked into their office and you pitched their idea and they're, oh, good job, sorry, Kenny, yeah, we're going to go do this. But to be able to, get their ear, and not only get their ear, but turn that into buy-in from them, how much motivation did that give you to keep pushing this when it just felt like, well, I have this idea and nothing's happening?
Well, I think it's crucial, to get that leadership buy-in. I think that's one thing that Matt and the team in kind of innovation office, they really taught me. And over the years, you kind of, as you get a little longer in the tooth, you learn that, higher level commanders, or even, they speak in three languages, right? Money, manpower, and resources. So if you can figure out how to really tailor your message into one of those three channels, kind of what's the return on my investment? And I think that's where, again, Matt and team, helped out tremendously. Even just doing research, because as that climbs, it becomes another whole thing, capability, lines of effort, and so having them, really kind of help me figure that out. It would have been a long road without their support. And I think the one thing I say, I talk to other innovators and people who are kind of right there at that cusp. The one thing that SparkTank really showed me is right up until then, kind of felt alone. I mean, it was just like me and Matt, like we're just trudging along, late nights, or practicing until we actually got to the event. And I was there with like 6 other people who were right where I was. You know what I mean? And so it made me realize that, for those people who are in those positions, you are not alone. It can be wicked lonely. It can feel super defeating, but don't give up, because you are not alone. And you have organizations like Tesseract and people like yourselves. And really, there's a community that you don't even know is there, unless you have a way to kind of get tapped into it. But don't give up, right? Don't give up. If you believe that your idea can make a difference, it will. It may not be super quick. I think the surprising thing is, I'm like, why is this? When this whole thing happened, I'm like, why is this so hard? It's taken like 3 years to get this done. And again, you don't know what you don't know, and then you run into people, and everybody wants to know is, how did you do this in 3 years? And so, I think there's something to be shared there. But one, don't work in a vacuum, right? That's the first piece of advice I would give. I kind of made that mistake in the beginning. Don't work in a vacuum, and especially in the innovation space, stop competing and start collaborating. I see that a lot too. I think that's the two biggest fouls, I would say. If you're doing this all by yourself, and you're just trying to, what I mean, compete against somebody else, like, and competition's good. Don't get me wrong, but our spark sells better. Like the rivalry, right? But don't let it get out of hand. Sometimes it happens, right? We're humans. But I would say those are probably the two biggest things. Include your leadership early. A lot of things that I learned kind of as we were going through them, or after the fact, kind of after the fact. But your leadership and contracting office. If you don't know anybody in your contracting office and you're trying to push like SBIRs or innovation ideas through, it can be really tough, because they may not understand how that process works either. And so, having those, actually, what was it? There was a disruptive AF triggered. He has his chat, or he has his podcast, and that's where I heard about the contracting piece. And so that was one of the things that I did that really kind of helped out. But I think it's really about that leadership buy-in, and working with your teammates to really kind of get those ideas. You know what I mean? To really kind of actually move the idea.
Yeah, I love it. I love that, that because that stuff's that stuff's not easy. Learning about those things and how contracting money and all that stuff works, like it takes a lot. And I'm a huge component. Like I don't always have to be the expert in those things, but like you said, if you can network and find out the people that can plug you into those right connections, especially in this type of space, obviously everything just clicks all the time, but it does get the ball rolling once you can get someone to speak those different types of languages that you're going to need.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's the really the catalyst for any idea or concept. It just takes that commitment, the commitment to the idea, and just the buy-in and the team as a whole. And once you get that, it becomes really difficult to stop. I don't know if "stop's" probably the right word, but like try to hold back. And once we had the idea of the concept, it was easy because I could show people. Seeing is believing. And again, to quote Matt, when we talk about bio anything, it has this like negative connotation of being less than, uh, or eco, like you talk about eco-friendly, eco anything, and it kind of in our mind we automatically go to this like subversion of full strength. And so being able to show people like, hey, like this is an actual viable product. I literally had like my airman, my Power Pro airman here at Spangdahlem, when we got our first prototype, we set it up, and I had a staff sergeant who was like, "Senior K, how he thought I was actually like tricking, like this was some sort of like ruse or trick." He was like, "How are you doing this?" And I'm like, "It works." And he was like, and from that day forth, he's been like one of the biggest advocates. He's actually taken it and deployed with it quite a few times in the field. And so I think that's the other part of this too is sharing the idea of that concept, and letting other people kind of take it. And again, even when I was on stage at SparkTank, and I never really looked at it as trying to sell solar on tent or an atmospheric water harvester. It was about a capability that only your imagination could stop. And we've seen that many folds over as this idea has continued to grow. But I think one of the other things too, we were talking about SparkTank, just kind of some of the lessons I've learned, and for the people who are going that path, saying, "Hey, I have a good idea for SparkTank. I want to submit." Some of the things I can tell you is, one of the things that for me, when we got there, just again, meeting those other six people, and the incredible ideas that they had come up with, and having the opportunity just to stand on stage with them was an amazing experience, and brief our senior leaders. Second, it was something I'll remember forever. That opportunity, but being having the opportunity to be named the winner was a super humbling experience, and I was just kind of like, all right, we did it. Matt was right. Like we got there. Where's the guy with the balloons and the big check, right? Because that's let's go, let's fund these systems, and let's take off running. But the reality was, 48 hours later, when I got home, that was when the work really started. I was like, okay, where's this funding going to come from? And so it started kind of another whole process of, all right, we kind of bootstrapped our own prototype and first system, but how do we continue to grow this? And so basically, you started coordinating with innovation cells at MatchCom, and we had a few other opportunities. And so Safety actually funded the system or the ask from SparkTank. And so when we got that one, immediately it was like, all right, first we got to take the system. And so we deployed to Poland. It was right about the time all the conflict on our eastern front kind of kicked off. And there was like a summer camp that had these Ukrainian children. that were there. And so we deployed there. We set it up, the tent as a classroom. They were teaching the kids English and teaching them, just kind of educating them in there. But we ran that system 24 hours a day for 14 days in the field, and we burnt 3 gallons of gas the entire time. And so that was just, for me, from just a few years before, like, this is going to work, to actually having in the field. That was just validation. It was like all that work was worth it. The nights away was worth it. And so really just to see it go. And that was the other thing I kind of talked about, getting your leadership involved. Obviously your peer group, contracting, but PA was another one. And we actually deployed this just a 3-man team. We put everything, if you've ever seen that picture, all of that fit in 2 pickup. Everything that you see in fold fit in back of 2 pickup trucks. But one of the 3 team members was a PA member, and he captured the whole thing while we were there. And so that's another thing I would say is work with the PA office and keep them in the loop, as they can help craft and pitch your story just as good as anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. So you quickly went through that SparkTank experience. We'll just take a couple step backs, because when you first mentioned it, you said you had never even heard of it. So for those that are still curious and are just entering the space, take us back a little bit to when you first got involved and you knew your project was going to go into SparkTank, and some of those processes there of what you were doing and what types of presentations you were making before you got selected as a finalist and then eventually the winner.
Yeah, so again, working with the innovation cell here in Mac, we did the paperwork. We submitted the idea in game. That's kind of where, if you're looking for that, that's kind of where that process starts. And you submit the paperwork, and then we created the very first video in the conference room right out here beside my office. And I kind of watch that video now and just kind of cringe a little. But from kind of where it started. And so we submitted the video, and then there was like a line of questioning, because it's not just like it just goes straight there. There are groups and teams, and as this idea builds, the wing, I think it maybe a little bit shaped a little bit different now, but at the time, the wing picked 2 winners, and then those 2 winners, you went to the MaxCom, and then the MaxCom selected 2 winners, and then it went to the semifinals, and then the quarterfinals, and then to the finals. So it was kind of every layer of that hierarchy was a different round of questioning. Kind of in the beginning, it was what's the return on investment, how much power can you, things of that nature. And as we progressed through that process, I think at the end we were assigned mentors, kind of like these project management mentors, and so we would meet once a week and kind of talk about where we're at and some of the benefits and how you're going to message this. It's kind of the beginning of pitch coaching, if you will, right there towards the end. So, but there were many different outside entities, military entities that kind of looked at these concepts, and they would ask, you would kind of field some questions from them. So even as you go through that process, you're constantly refining, rehoning, kind of re-looking at what your idea is and what that problem is that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you talked about eventually, obviously you're named the winner, and then you could go right back to Spangdahlem, and you're right back to work. And you had this opportunity to take your product to a deployed location, and that it successfully works, right? You have proof, you have marketing behind you now with PA. So where did it evolve from? You're the winner, you get back to the base, and now you can go use a viable product, and now you have a product that you can use. How did that change what your product was and what you were able to pitch, and where it is today, and what it's used for now?
Yeah, so there's coming back, had the opportunity last year to kind of expand my toolkit, if you will, in the innovation space. I got to attend Design Warfare, which was an incredible class. If you ever have the opportunity, it's a great tool for kind of human-centered design and kind of human-centered design and thinking. So that was a great opportunity. And then there are some other avenues with the refineries that are out there to kind of help. I mean, those would be things that if you're on kind of a newer trying to get an idea off the ground, they can be huge tools because they've kind of figured out. AppWorks has kind of figured out how do they put all these things into one space and make them available to kind of the innovator. But I think the big thing there was after the fact was okay. We started getting it in the field, and it was like you started building that network. Not even necessarily a network of innovators, but just a network in general of I have a question. You know what I mean? Like who out there knows? And you'd be surprised. You go from one person to the next, and before you know it, there's literally hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people who can help point you in the right direction. And so, I think that was the big thing for ArcWater as we were trying to move it along. Is like, hey, okay, what's the biggest? This is you'll chuckle at this, but I'm like, what's the biggest exercise in the U.S. military? And somebody was like, Mobile Guardian, and I was like, okay, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're going to get integrated in the Mobile Guardian. And so we started that effort in 2022. Then, sure as anything, by the time we get into early this year in 23, we've got a letter of support from General Donahue at the Pentagon, and we start like trying to figure out how we're going to get systems to where they need to be. And so we actually were in Mobility Guardian this year in Guam. Just before that, through the whole conflict on the eastern flank, I actually met a lieutenant colonel out of APSAL. And so they hadn't had, they do what they call Operation Cooperation, but they hadn't had it in 3 years because of COVID. And so he reached out and was like, hey, we want to take this with us. The Air National Guard, it was a medical exercise with the West Virginia Air National Guard. And so he was like, we want to take this capability down to Peru. And so we coordinated that. They took it down to Peru. They set it up and used it in that exercise. And then on its way back, it actually ended up going to Mobility Guardian. And then finally just made its way home about a month ago. It was our system that we had bought. But again, it was the support of leadership, right? Like this isn't Senior Kenney's system, right? These are capabilities that my commanders own. And so, I go to them and say, hey, sir, I want to spread the goodness. And we want to let our brother and sister units use these systems. And they were, fully supportive. And so it's been kind of steadily growing. One of the things I think is super interesting is, you'll learn sometimes, I use the atmospheric water harvester, for example. We didn't get a silver for it. So we had to buy it like product, right? Commercial off the shelf. And so we got it. And as always, we immediately take it to the field. We took it to Poland when we deployed. We had the system for about 8 months. And then when we got funding for our second system, ArcWater system, we went back and we were like, hey, we literally gave them about a Microsoft document, a page and a half of we need to change this needs to get, you know what I mean? It was like all these, I won't call them requirements, but like kind of all these things to kind of make it a little bit more survivable in the field. And one of the things was the original system wasn't man portable. And so that was kind of one of the goals when I wanted to do this ACE concept was let's get rid of 10Ks, the forklifts, these massive forklifts. Let's make ourselves a truly agile. And so on the second version of the atmospheric water harvester, working with Denn, we actually designed it for its modular. So like the atmospheric water harvesting piece is in its own module. reverse osmosis unit is in its own module, and it has a power system. And it's third module, but you can actually disconnect them all. They're all connected via computer cable and things of that nature. You can disconnect them, load them in the truck, and then just drive away. You don't need a forklift to pick them up. And so I think that was one of the interesting things about, just because you get to the end doesn't mean you necessarily to the end. You continually look and say, hey, how do we make this not necessarily better, but like how do we make this more effective? And so I think that's kind of been one of the things of where we're at now. I'm super excited because we actually just got funding at the end of the year. We proposed a project to use safety to take a hardened aircraft shelter off the grid. And so it's actually funded. Contract's been awarded. We're excited, waiting on delivery. But we kind of took the same concept from ArcWater and the kind of solar thinking piece and scaled it up. I'm sure you well know, installation resiliency is a huge push. And so we're going to use this as proof of concept that we can take this hardened aircraft shelter off the grid, HAZ. Also, so I'm not going to explain it, but take a HAZ off the grid. And the goal is in 3 to 5 years, taking the entire airfield off the grid. So that way, even if the power company that powers the base goes off, we can still open the blast doors and get the jets in the air to do the mission. And so what the idea there was we have, especially here at Spangal, right? We're a little bit of a smaller installation, and so real estate is a premium. And so it was like, hey, why don't we use all this unused real estate that we have on the airfield, aka hazardous, and create our own microgrid, right? We can create our own little power sources and then tie that back into the base, at least to the critical assets in the beginning, right? What critical functions do we need? And how can we use this unused space to power those critical infrastructures when we need them? And so the unique thing about it is zero modification is required to the hardened aircraft. And so we've had a lot of, you just basically lay the fabric over, the solar fabric over it, and then just ratchet it down. And so that's one of the projects that we're really excited about. And I know Jason Yunker in PACAF, he's from the Viper kit. That was, I think, the SparkTank before. He was at Spangal and we were here together. But he actually is working on from the ArcWater concept, basically a trailer mounted. It looks like a generator, but it's on a trailer. And so when you expand those, you basically just grab the solar fabric and it just pulls out like on a rail. And so you kind of create your own little solar field, if you will, but kind of on the fly. And so he's got some really interesting concepts. I know he's working on that one. When he gets that one up and running, I'm going to slide in there and probably buy a few of those. We'll play the back and forth game. But I think that just kind of goes to show it's really just a capability. We've had the Army interest from pretty much all the branches of service, whether it be the atmospheric water harvesting piece or the kind of the solar production piece. But I think one of the biggest takeaways from SparkTank and kind of that whole journey was just having the ability to share and mentor and mold my peers, if you will. We've had another innovation, actually two innovations, one at the Department of Defense level, and the other one here on base, both through SIVers. One is for what we call nanobubbles. One of the unique things we have here at Spangal is a wastewater treatment. And so we do water from cradle to grave here at Spangal. We have our wells off base where we have permits to pull the water. We have our own water purification plants, so on and so forth. And it all eventually ends up at the sewage plant, the wastewater treatment plant. And so working with this kind of siver that actually it produces these oxygen bubbles on a nano scale. It can actually increase the productivity of your plant production by about 30 to 40% is what we're estimating. without ever expanding the infrastructure once they're in. And so that's a huge win for us because we're looking at the potential of obviously you have to de-ice heavies right before they take off. Well, you can't let that glycol go straight to the wastewater treatment plant because it will kill all the bacteria in the plant, and then you can't flush anything on base for about 3 to 5 months is what they estimate. So it's a super controlled process, and so we're hoping that through this process alone, we have teams that are on 24-hour standby during the winter months, which are about 7 months of the year here, that are on standby to do that recovery. And so we're hoping that through this process and that improved efficiency, that we'll be able to feed that glycol into the plant to let it get processed and save thousands, literally thousands of man through the winter months just from those processes alone. So I think that's probably been one of the most rewarding things for SparkTank is having that opportunity to watch somebody else pursue their and really kind of guide and help them and say, hey, if I were you, it's just new thing. If I were you, I would probably call X, Y, and Z. And it's kind of teach a man to fish concept, right? And so that by far has been one of the really most awesome parts of having that experience and just kind of gaining that knowledge.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just love the whole process of everything you just said, and I go back to what you said earlier. The idea was, what's a capability, and just the evolution of your own idea and product. Like if you were to go back and just fall in love with your idea product at the beginning and not jump on to the capabilities of what could be, you really would have just been stuck in the mud of your own idea. And I think a message, and maybe you can expand on a little bit, is don't just fall in love with that first idea, but what can this create overall, and fall in love with that process of what am I making better. It might not be that initial first step that you thought, and obviously yours has clearly expanded and then jumped over and crossed over into other amazing ideas.
Well, I would say so. That's kind of where we're at right now. But I know I probably got just a few minutes left, but share with you where we're going.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been working with the Rapid Sustainment Office for the last probably year, about 2 years now. And I'm hoping, we were kind of hoping this fall, it may be in the spring, but we've been working on a concept called HEXT, HEXT, hands-off expeditionary tenting. And so the idea is it's an automated tent. So it's a 400, the first prototypes of this concept are going to be a 400 square foot tent, or just a little bit, which is just a little bit smaller than the tent that actually we use ArcWater on. But you set it down, you push a button, and the tent constructs itself in 3 minutes. Right? This is the reality. I'm not talking about like we've already got the functioning prototype. It works. And so we're about to hopefully get our system here soon and start taking that to the field. But the long-term idea is, how do I take that ArcWater concept and integrate it into HEXT? And so now you have a one-stop shop shelter empowering system. You set it down, you have it's already marked out, so you know where to put them all. You set them down, you just go down the line and you push the buttons, and roughly 7 minutes later, you've got as many tents as you want to put up, right? But the cool part of that is we're doing it in such a way that it's actually not that much more. You start talking about some of these innovative ideas, it takes money, right? It's kind of expensive, and so depending on what you're after. But it's really not that much more expensive than the current products that we buy and use in the field. Again, slightly smaller, so you're probably paying a little bit, probably about equal per square foot. But I think that's going to be a super interesting concept. And the other one I keep trying to, I'm not going to give up afterwards, so you might as well approve this sometime soon. But is an automated LAM. We've submitted a LAM is a large area maintenance shelter. It's kind of like a clamshell that you see in the CE world. Most people don't want to get anywhere near them. They're very difficult to put up, but takes a couple days to put them up. It can be dangerous. There's a lot of safety concerns. And so that's another one of the ideas that I want to get after is how do we automate that process? Make it super safe for our engineers out there in the field that are putting this together on a daily basis, and make it quick. Instead of 3 days, maybe it's 3 hours. And so, but that's kind of where we're heading in the future. You set your tent down, you push the button, it sets itself up in 3 minutes. You make one connection and turn the light. Lights and everything are integrated into it. Push the button, and there you go. So that's hopefully, again, while we're taking airfields off the grid, we're building tents in the next 3 to 5 years that you can take anyone into.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to see what some of these things become. But as we wrap up, Sergeant Kenney, I ask this to most of the guests that we have on here, because we got Airmen Big A and Little A all throughout the Air Force who were in your shoes just a few years ago with this idea, and they don't know where to go, they don't know what to do. What is advice that you would give if you could go back just a few years ago to yourself before this journey started to help you along the way?
I think one, I guess maybe that's kind of where that idea, I won't say I was going to give up on it, but at the same time, don't give up. But if I could go back and give myself some advice, hard things are hard, and that's okay. Don't let that be a discouragement for you. And I know too, sometimes go slow to go fast. I know sometimes we're always looking for what's around the corner, what's the next thing. Like see at least that those versions to begin, because you'll be surprised. It may not turn out like you thought it would in the beginning, and that way the next go around you'll be better educated. You'll have the data, those type things. I know to be honest, I think that's what having that experience of getting to build and design two completely different systems. I did not go slow to go fast. I went fast to go fast with that first kind of design, and I didn't know what I didn't know. But luckily, I had that opportunity to reflect, and when we got to build the next one, I took all those lessons and learned. I saw that first version, if you will, kind of to the end, and so I think that really kind of helped me. But yeah, that would probably be the advice I would give myself, and have fun. That would probably be. I know. I think that kind of goes back to the hard things are hard, right? Like you get paid to do this, right? It's awesome. Yeah, it might be a night or weekend here or there, but that's okay, right? Because the impacts that big A and little A airmen can have are limitless in our Air Force. And so leadership is rankless. Don't ever let that stop you. There'll be hurdles along the way, but again, don't give up. Believe in yourself. Believe in your ideas, and I promise you, there are people out there that will come around you and help you get there. So that would probably be the third piece of advice would be lean on that system that's there.
I love it. Well, I just want to say thanks for taking time out of your schedule. I know it's evening time for you. I'm about to start my day over here, and I can't wait to see where this thing goes.
And again, thank you guys for taking the time to just let me share some lessons learned with you guys, and huge thanks to Tesseract, obviously. This process over the last couple of years, you guys have been a huge advocate for Project ArcWater, and even just some of these future ideas, you guys have been super supportive. So huge thanks to the team on that end. And again, if you ever have anybody who's looking for some or has questions or looking for some advice, shoot me an email, give me a call, and see if I can get you from the right direction.
Sounds great. Thank you. Have a good one.